Have you ever wondered if one person could truly change the world and end all wars? Today, we're diving into the story of a man who believed he could, Woodrow Wilson, America's 28th president, a figure of immense ambition, idealism, and ultimately, tragic irony. This isn't just a history lesson. It's the epic tale of a visionary who reached for a world without conflict before he was a global statesman. Woodrow Wilson was a scholar, a professor, and the president of Princeton University. He wasn't your typical politician. He was an intellectual, a deep thinker who believed that rational thought and moral principles could solve the world's most complex problems. When he was elected president in 1912, his focus was on domestic issues. He launched a progressive agenda called the New Freedom, tackling everything from banking reform to antitrust laws. For a while, it seemed his presidency would be defined by these internal changes, but across the Atlantic, the winds of war were gathering. In the summer of 1914, Europe exploded into what we now call World War I, a tangled web of alliances. Imperial ambitions and simmering nationalism dragged nation after nation into a brutal, bloody conflict. For most Americans, this was a distant European squabble. President Wilson agreed. He immediately declared a policy of strict neutrality. His message to the American people was clear. We must be impartial in thought as well as in action. He was re-elected in 1916 on the powerful slogan, "He kept us out of war." America wanted peace, and Wilson seemed to be the man to deliver it. But staying neutral in a world engulfed by war is easier said than done. Germany's aggressive submarine warfare was a major problem. German U-boats began sinking vessels in the Atlantic, including passenger ships carrying American citizens. The sinking of the British liner Lusitania in 1915, which killed over 100 Americans, caused a massive public outcry. Wilson resisted the calls for war, choosing diplomacy instead. He demanded Germany stop its unrestricted submarine warfare, and for a time, they complied. The peace, however, was fragile. The breaking point came in early 1917. Germany, desperate to break the stalemate in Europe, announced it would resume unrestricted submarine warfare. They knew this would likely bring the U.S. into the war, but it was a risk they were willing to take. Then, the Zimmermann telegram was intercepted. This secret message from Germany to Mexico proposed a military alliance against the United States, promising Mexico the return of Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona if they joined the fight. The news was explosive. The threat was no longer an ocean away. It was at America's doorstep. On April 2nd, 1917, a somber Woodrow Wilson stood before Congress. The man who had campaigned on peace now asked for a declaration of war. But he framed it not as a fight for territory or revenge, but as a crusade for democracy. In his famous words, "The world must be made safe for democracy." He wasn't just sending soldiers to fight. He was sending them to win a war, to end all wars. It was a monumental shift, not just for his presidency, but for America's role in the world. The isolationist nation was about to step onto the global stage as a major power. With America's entry, the tide of the war began to turn. The infusion of fresh American troops, resources, and industrial might tipped the scales in favor of the Allies. But Wilson's mind was already on what came next. He wasn't just focused on winning the war. He was obsessed with winning the peace. In January 1918, he unveiled his master plan for a new world order, the 14 Points. This wasn't just a peace treaty. It was a blueprint for a global community based on free trade, open diplomacy, self-determination for all nations, and, most importantly, a new international organization. The centerpiece of his vision, the 14th and final point, was the creation of a General Association of Nations. This would become known as the League of Nations. Wilson envisioned it as a global forum where countries could resolve their disputes through negotiation and diplomacy, not warfare. It was a revolutionary idea. He believed this league would provide collective security, ensuring that an act of aggression against one member would be seen as an act against all. This, he thought, was the key to preventing another catastrophic war. When the armistice was signed in November 1918, Wilson became the first sitting U.S. president to travel to Europe. He was greeted not as a politician, but as a savior. Huge crowds in Paris, London, and Rome cheered for him, hailing him as the man who would bring lasting peace. He was the most powerful and admired man in the world. But the negotiations at the Paris Peace Conference would prove far more difficult than he imagined. The other Allied leaders, like Georges Clemenceau of France and David Lloyd George of Britain, were less interested in idealistic visions. They wanted to punish Germany and secure their own national interests. The resulting Treaty of Versailles was a bitter compromise. While it did include the creation of the League of Nations, it also imposed harsh penalties on Germany, which many historians believe sowed the seeds for World War II. Wilson had to make concession after concession to save his beloved League. He believed that even an imperfect League was better than no League at all, trusting it could fix the treaty's flaws over time. He returned home exhausted but triumphant, believing he had secured a permanent peace. But his greatest battle was yet to come, and it would be on home soil. In the U.S. Senate, a powerful opposition was mounting against the Treaty of Versailles. Led by Republican Senator Henry Cabot Lodge, they feared that joining the League of Nations would entangle America in future European conflicts and compromise its sovereignty. The debate was fierce. Refusing to compromise, Wilson embarked on a grueling cross-country train tour to take his case directly to the American people. He delivered passionate speeches, pleading for them to support his vision. But the tour shattered his health. He suffered a debilitating stroke that left him partially paralyzed. From his sickbed, Wilson was unable to effectively lead the fight. The Senate ultimately rejected the Treaty of Versailles. America would not join the League of Nations, the organization Wilson had poured his heart and soul into. The very institution he believed would end all wars was launched without the participation of its most powerful advocate. It was a crushing political and personal defeat. The League, weakened without U.S. involvement, was ultimately unable to prevent the aggression that led to World War II just 2 decades later. Woodrow Wilson's story is a profound lesson in the clash between idealism and reality. He was a visionary who dreamed of a better world, a world free from the horrors of war. He fundamentally changed America's role on the global stage, moving it from isolationism to international leadership. Yet, his stubborn refusal to compromise led to the downfall of his greatest ambition. Was he a failed idealist or a prophet ahead of his time? His legacy is complex and still debated today. But his quest for a war to end all wars remains one of the most compelling and tragic chapters in presidential history. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think of Wilson's legacy? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this story fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. We'll see you in the next video.